That talk about Watergate got me thinking about a guest we had on here a couple of weeks ago. Actor Hal Holbrook spoke of his years playing Mark Twain. But Holbrook was also in the big Watergate movie, All the President's Men, playing the mysterious deep-throat source. Barely visible in a shadowy underground parking lot, he gave his famous advice to the young reporter.
Just follow the money.
Follow the money. It's that yellow brick money trail that's supposed to lead to the truth. But watching the news this week, I've come to the conclusion that following the money only gets you so far. I say follow the oil. You've heard of the unified field theory to explain all things. Here is my unified oil field theory, starting with presidential politics. When the president and his Democratic challenger tried to drive their messages home to voters this week, what did they talk about? The price of peanut butter?
If the gas prices keep rising at the rate they're going now, Dick Cheney and George Bush are going to have to carpool to work.
Senator Kerry is on this thing about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Why is the government topping up its emergency storage tanks when gasoline prices have reached an all-time high? Won't they just help keep the price high? And how does filling the reserves help the person who is really suffering, the consumer? He's like a parched guy crawling through the desert searching for a drop to drink. He meets a fellow with a garden hose who says, "I can't help you. I got to fill up this bathtub just in case somebody needs water." Now, the government isn't buying much oil for its storage tanks in the grand scheme of things. It's just that the timing seems off, like the oil producers cartel OPEC this week, opting to cut the amount of oil they pump by 4% based on the idea that there's too much oil in the world. Where do they get that? The Democrats want the Bush administration to at least yell at OPEC. Energy Secretary Spencer Abrahams says the U.S. is engaged in discussions with OPEC, but, quote, "we're not going to beg for oil." Anyway, yelling isn't in the cards. The most powerful country in OPEC, the one with the biggest oil reserves, is Saudi Arabia, a crucial U.S. ally in the war on terror. But the Bush team is not about to let the price per gallon at every gas station in America turn into a Vote for John Kerry billboard. What is the weapon of choice for returning Kerry's fire? You guessed it, oil.
Some people have wacky ideas, like taxing gasoline more so people drive less. That's John Kerry.
Now, this prompted a Washington Post editorial that used somewhat oily logic to argue that had the 50-cent a gallon gas tax made it into law 10 years ago, it never did, then maybe gas prices would have paradoxically been lower by now. Why? Because the higher gas tax might have prompted us to buy thriftier new cars, perhaps something less SUV-ish and more Prius-y. SUV-ish and Prius-y are my personal contributions to the lexicon, by the way, not the Washington Post's. You can follow the oil in both personal and high finance. The personal is easy. The prospect of $3 a gallon causes money to ooze from the household budget. The macro is a little harder to imagine, but here's the deal. The gap between what the government is paying for and what the Treasury brings in this year is a whopper, more than $500 billion. A deficit this big tells foreign investors that America doesn't have its economic house in order, and they're more inclined to invest elsewhere. The value of the U.S. dollar falls. So what? The thing is, barrels of oil are not sold in pesos or Venezuelan bolivars. They're sold in dollars. That means when the dollar falls, big oil producers like Mexico or Venezuela can't convert their oil sales into as much of their own local currency. This makes oil-producing countries push for higher oil prices through those cuts in production that we were talking about, which can add up to a lousy equation. Deficit equals higher oil prices. Neat, huh? Instead of giving us that tax cut that fed the deficit, maybe they should have sent the money directly to the gasoline companies and saved us the trouble. Follow the oil, indeed. That's it for now. Bill Moyers and I will be back next week. I'm David Brancaccio. Good night.